So we'll cultivate our motivation. In the last verse we did, Shantideva spoke about putting on shoes instead of trying to cover the earth with leather. The analogy being working with our own mind rather than trying to control other people. So what can you do to remember to do this? Are there phrases that you could say to yourself when you start to get angry or annoyed? How can you put this verse into practice? Then with an attitude that thinking, I will change my own way of looking at this situation. I will change my own behavior, my own thought, and abandon anger and blame. Then that gives space to cultivate compassion for other people. Wishing them to be free of suffering. And then that mind of compassion can be the cause of bodhicitta. The more times we generate bodhicitta, even if it's contrived bodhicitta, the more we put that imprint into our mind. And one day it will become actual bodhicitta. Well, we had April weather in January, and now we have January weather in April. And samsara continues to be unpredictable. But predicting that it is unpredictable. So we should be not be surprised when all this happens. Okay. So we're just in Chapter 5, Guarding Alertness, or Guarding Introspective Awareness. We were talking about how the pain and misery comes from our mind, and how the practice of the perfections also depends on the mind. So generosity doesn't depend on solving all the poverty in the world. Ethical conduct doesn't mean stopping everybody else from harming, or even stopping everybody else from feeling harm at our behavior when we had no intention of harming and they misunderstood the situation. And then, looking at a way to deal with anger instead of blaming others, wanting to control them, getting upset at them. Yeah, because we can't even control our own mind, let alone their mind. So we should at least try and control our mind, and that's the meaning of putting on shoes instead of trying to cover the world in leather. Okay, so that's a very famous verse, and it's an incredible practical verse, to remember. Because once we get into blame, once we let anger take hold and get into blame, it's a slippery slope, We go downhill and then we start looking at every small thing somebody else did and we get infuriated and then we're mad at the whole ambience around us. And we go back and, remember how, develop all sorts of stories about my whole life. I've been subjected to all this torture of this and that. And it just makes us totally miserable. Okay. So this is not saying that people haven't been abused or people don't have PTSD or whatever. Those things are quite real. But the thing is, how are you going to respond to it? That's the trick, And what stops suffering? What mental attitude will stop the suffering? And what mental attitude exacerbates the suffering? So here, we have a certain thing, I don't know, about we've got to be right. And if we're right, okay, I'm suffering. And if I'm right that this person did this, and why am I right? Because my friends agree with me that they're the naughty person. So, if I'm right, then we have this feeling of, well, I'm entitled to inflict harm on them. I'm entitled to feel sorry for myself. I'm entitled to, blame them and wallow in my own whatever, waiting for them to confess and apologize, which, they don't do. And some of them don't even know that, that we're so upset about the situation. Okay. So it's, we have a choice how to view the situation, how to structure it in our own mind. And one choice creates more unhappiness, and another choice just is able to let it go. Okay. So I remember one time years ago complaining to one Dharma friend of mine. I was living in a certain place and the people this and that. And I was complaining to him and he said, "This is samsara. What do you expect?" That stopped me dead in my tracks. Well, actually, I expected perfection. I expected everything in this situation to be wonderful. And even when it wasn't, I expected the other people in it should at least be truthful and they should at least apologize. And they should at least hear my pain and not do what they're doing anymore. That's what I expected. And then it's like, Okay, kid, go ahead and expect that and see where it takes you. Yeah, it was quite obvious it wasn't going to take me to any kind of peace in my mind. Okay, so verse 14. Likewise, it is not possible for me to restrain the external course of things, but should I restrain this mind of mine, what would be the need to restrain all else? Okay, so we cannot control the world. And if we're miserable the way the world is, then we have to restrain our own negative afflictions about the world. Okay, now, some people could easily misinterpret this and think that it means you just accept injustice. You just accept oppression. You just accept, corruption. Because if you don't just accept it, then you're going to get angry and you can't control it. So just say, I accept it and do nothing about it and, stick your head further into the sand. Yeah, we can easily misinterpret it to mean that. That's not what Shantideva means. Okay? If there is injustice or harm or oppression or whatever going on in the world, we need to act to remedy it because we have compassion for the people who are suffering due to it, and we have compassion for the perpetrators. Okay? But in order to have compassion for both the perpetrators and the people who are suffering, we have to have a calm mind. Okay? As long as our mind is angry, then we take sides in the situation. And then our mind usually becomes exactly like the mind of the people who we are protesting against or whose behavior we don't like. So the idea is we practice fortitude to calm our own mind, and then that gives us a stable basis and an open mind to understand how all the different people in the situation are looking at it, and to see if we can come up with some kind of resolution that will satisfy the needs of the different people, or at least some of the needs, probably not all of them of each side, but at least some of them. Okay. But in order to really, be adept at conflict resolution, we have to have the mind that wishes both sides well, which means we have to practice fortitude. Okay. So fortitude doesn't mean we become passive. Okay. Repeat. It does not mean we become passive. It also does not mean that we legitimize our revenge and our blame by saying, well, I practiced fortitude, but those people are still rotten, which means we haven't actually practiced fortitude. We've practiced anger. Okay, so, it's a delicate mind. We have to really be sensitive to what's going on in our own mind. Yeah, because it's easy to whitewash things, especially, if it's somebody else suffering, it's easy to whitewash things. If you're part of the minority class, whether it's the gender minority, racial minority, religious minority, whatever minority, you tend to, say, well, what can I do? And especially as women, we are trained to be nice and be good and don't make a fuss. So, what we often do is, instead of resolving our anger, we stuff it. Okay? Because it's socially unacceptable for us to express it. Now, that doesn't mean that we should say, well, I've been stuffing my anger for so long, so now I'm tired of stuffing it. I'm tired of taking care of all those other people and giving in to what they want, and if I'm angry, they're gonna know it. Bleh. And we throw our anger up on all of them. Okay. That's not resolving the problem. Okay. So the resolution of repressing your anger isn't turning around and blaming everybody else. Just like the resolution of always taking care of other people and developing some resentment because of that, the remedy to that isn't saying, well, I'm not taking care of anybody anymore and I'm just out of here and I'm going to do what I want. That isn't the resolution either. Okay? And I say this because we so often, we're at this extreme and we go to that extreme. Okay? And so we actually, what our desired outcome is, we want to be free from the mental affliction that is making us miserable. And whether we stuff it or whether we act it out, it's still making us miserable. And we're still creating negative karma. Yeah. Maybe a little bit less if we stuff it, because we aren't doing verbal and physical harm, but it's going to come out in some other way. Okay? So that's why it's really important to not only learn the antidotes to anger, but practice them in your daily meditation and remember situations in the past where you got upset and then think about these various antidotes and apply them to that situation that you were upset about in the past. And that way you get some familiarity with the antidotes. And the more familiarity you have, the easier it's going to be to remember them and apply them when you're in a situation. Yeah. People often write and they ask me, oh, what do I do when, I'm just furious in the middle of a situation? Yeah, how do I get rid of the anger then? That's too late. Yeah. Well, it's never too late. But the real way to do it is to practice it when you're not angry, because even remembering situations in the past will make you slightly angry in your meditation. And then you practice using that Dharma antidote. Yeah. Okay. When you're full-blown raging, the best thing you can do is say, I'm really upset right now. I don't want to say or do something that I regret. Please excuse me. I'm going to calm myself down. When I'm calm, I will come back and talk to you. And then excuse yourself. And sometimes the other person gets mad. Yeah, because they want to have a big argument. Some people kind of like that. I had one person I was working with one time. He really liked having arguments. It helped him define himself. And so one time, there was an argument starting, and I just said, I'm not participating. I turned and walked away, and he shouted after me, what are you doing? Come back here. You're running away. I just kept going. Yeah, because I knew that my state of mind at that moment, I did not want to get hooked into what was going on with him. And I was too upset to kind of sit and listen. Yeah. So, but he got mad, but, that was nothing unusual, unfortunately. Okay. So verse 14 is saying, but should I restrain this mind of mine, what would be the need to restrain all else? Okay, so if I'm able to calm my mind, then I don't need to get angry and try and control other people. Yeah. And this is especially difficult if you have a family member or a loved one and you see them doing behavior that is really bad for them. They're smoking a few packs of cigarettes a day, they're drinking and drugging, they're, lying, they're gambling, all of the family money, whether it's in a casino or online Wall Street stuff, and you're furious and you're upset. And you know that what they're doing is not good for you or the rest of the family, and it's not good for them. And you want to go and grab them because they're an adult and say, stop it and listen to me because you're going down the wrong path, you idiot. Yeah, don't we? Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice to go and grab them and do that? Yeah. Problem is, most of them are probably bigger than us. So, yeah. And we can't control them. Even if we could go and grab them and shake them up, we can't control them. We can't control them. The guys I work with who are imprisoned, they tell me especially about drug and alcohol abuse, because often they have court orders to go to see a counselor about it or rehab or something. And they know the trick, and they go and they know what to say, and they continue drinking and drugging. But the court is, pleased. But they tell me that to really change, they have to really hit bottom. And until they hit bottom, there's not going to be the motivation to change. And so sometimes we have to let the people we care about hit bottom. We try and help them before they do, and we do our best to help them. But when somebody really, cannot handle it, they have to hit bottom, and then they start to change. Yeah. And then the change holds because they're quite aware through their own experience of what happens if they resume the bad habit. Yeah. Okay. As children, we can control and we can make them afraid of us. So they'll stop doing something out of fear. Not necessarily because of understanding, but at least they'll stop doing it out of fear, and not harm themselves. But when people get older, you can talk yourself blue in the face sometimes. And, their mind is made up. So you make prayers for them and wish them well and keep the door open, so that sometime when they, after they hit bottom and decide they need to change, that they know they can come back. And when they come back, it is so tempting to say, I told you so. But you really have to exercise extraordinary restraint at that mind, at that time. Because you really want to rub it in that we were right and you were wrong, and you should have listened to me long before you did, because then you wouldn't be in the jam you're in right now, you idiot. Isn't that the recording in your mind? You know? And you have to really restrain and say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll help you now. Yeah, of course, we're never that person who doesn't listen to advice. Yeah, we're never that person. Because everything we do is right. Yeah, and if we've really made a decision and we've decided to do something, that's our free choice, and other people can just mind their own business. Mm. It's amazing what our mind does, isn't it?
Sometimes I'm able to add even another layer, that when I see advice I received in the past from caring, loving people was good, and that I didn't listen to it, then my mind says, well, they should have made it more clear to me. They should have explained it better.
Yes. Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Anything except it's my responsibility. Anything but that. You tired? Tired of what?
So Gyaltsab says, verse 15, the heading is enthusiasm depends on the mind. And then 16 is mental stabilization depends on the mind.
17 is wisdom. Okay. Okay, yeah, so 15. Oh, yeah, of course. So 15 says, although the development of merely a clear state of concentration can result in taking birth in Brahma's realm, physical and verbal actions cannot so result when accompanied by weak mental conduct. So this is saying if you want to develop the dhyanas and single-pointed concentration, you need very strong, joyous effort. Okay, because you can develop a clear state of concentration that results in taking rebirth in Brahma's realm, yeah, if that's what you want. But that depends on exerting effort in your meditation practice. That involves training the mind, because physical and verbal actions cannot result in a rebirth in Brahma's realm. Only the practicing, serenity and then going beyond serenity in this life can result in that kind of rebirth. Okay, so when accompanied by weak mental conduct, when our mind is distracted, when our mind lacks effort, when we're lazy in our practice, then serenity and the dhyana level of concentration is not going to come about. Okay. Then 16, okay, so that's enthusiastic, joyous effort. Then 16 is about the perfection of meditative stability. So the knower of reality, in other words, the Buddha, said that even if recitation and physical hardships are practiced for long periods of time, they will be meaningless if the mind is distracted elsewhere. Okay, so even we do lots of recitation, we're all the time Om Mani Padme Hum. You do one retreat after the other with lots of mantra recitation. You do physical hardships, you don't just do 100,000 prostrations, but you say you're going to be like Jay Rinpoche and do 100,000 for each of the 35 Buddhas. So that's 3.5 million prostrations. And you've set yourself the deadline by, 2 weeks from tomorrow. And yeah. And so if even you really exert yourselves in recitation and physical hardships and, you do one nune after another, so you don't just stop at 108 nunes, but you think 108 years doing nune constantly, So you really put energy into your changing your speech and changing your body. But if the mind doesn't have the correct motivation, and you're daydreaming when you're doing all of these things and your mind is distracted, okay, then this is not going to bring about the result of, the perfection of meditative stability. Okay. Now here he says these things will become meaningless if the mind is distracted elsewhere. I think there's probably still a little bit of value in them, and at least you're doing them because you have faith, and you have faith and respect for the three jewels. But compared to the value you could reap if you do these things with a proper motivation and with proper concentration when you're doing them, compared to that, then it looks meaningless. Okay. So it's the kind of thing, well, I'm going to do these prostrations anyway. I might as well try and concentrate. Yeah. But then your mind says, oh, but it takes too much energy to concentrate, so I'll just be distracted. And I'll just see it as I'm going to the gym. I go up and down and up and down and up and down. And once in a while, I remember, there's some light coming into me, and I have some regret for past things. And then I go back to the gym, and I think I'm developing muscles, and I'm going to be so fit after this. And, okay, then it's, we're not really taking advantage of what we could be doing. Okay, so that one is about the perfection of meditative stability. Then 17 is about the perfection of wisdom. So even those who wish to find happiness and overcome misery will wander with no aim or meaning if they do not comprehend the secret of the mind, the paramount significance of Dharma. Okay, so if we don't understand emptiness, okay, which is the secret, the hidden mode of existence of the mind, and it's the real meaning of practicing the Dharma, because, actualizing the emptiness, actualizing the wisdom that realizes emptiness is the key to liberation and is also necessary to attain Buddhahood. Okay, so if we really wish, if we have a strong spiritual motivation to find happiness and overcome misery, not just the happiness of chocolate and the misery of not getting your chocolate, but real happiness and the dukkha of samsara, we will wander with no aim or meaning unless we generate that kind of wisdom. So we need to put joyous effort into learning the teachings on emptiness and then contemplating them and meditating on them. And we need to also improve our concentration, because even if we get an inkling of emptiness, if we cannot hold our mind on that, because our mind quickly, starts either getting dull or it's getting restless and agitated, then whatever we've understood, it can't really go deep in our mind, because it can't stay there, because our mind is on to something else. Yeah. Usually they did this to me and they don't appreciate me, or I want this and I want that, so it usually goes to some kind of eight worldly dharmas. Okay, so then verse 18, this being so, Okay, so yeah, this whole thing regarding how to actualize the 6 perfections. Yeah, so it all depends on the mind if you want to actualize the 6 perfections. So this being so, I shall hold and guard my mind well. Without the discipline of guarding the mind, what use are many other disciplines? Okay, so we may have lots of other disciplines. We may be a very disciplined person. I know all the rules and I follow all the rules. Okay, I know all the guidelines, I do those. I knew what my job description is, I can fit it, I am disciplined and I complete it exactly as it should be, and sometimes even earlier, or I do more than I should. I'm a very disciplined person. Yeah. And we consider ourselves disciplined, but we're disciplined in following the rules and getting the work done, but we're not disciplined in terms of controlling our mind. Because we'll follow the rules with a mind of, why do they have all these stinking rules anyway? These just don't make any sense. I want to remake them. And why are there these guidelines? They just don't make sense. These people are really ridiculous. I want to make the guidelines. And, why do I have to do the prostrations this way? I want to do them that way. Or, how we rebel against rules. Okay. Or we follow the rules, but we're kind of itchy inside of them because we don't feel completely, you know what I mean? We're not really happy with them. We feel confined, and we get anxious. Am I following the rules perfectly? Am I doing my job perfectly? Yeah, there's no room for me to make any mistake. Yeah, so we put that on ourselves, okay? So we can be very disciplined in some areas of our life. I always make my bed. I'm very disciplined. I take out the garbage. I clean my room. I brush my teeth every day, morning and evening, and I floss and I gargle with mouthwash, not the one that has alcohol, but the other kind. I follow all the dentist instructions. Okay. So then, yes, we're disciplined in that area of our life, and that's very good. It's helpful for your teeth. But, yeah, but if we don't discipline our mind and we continue to create negative karma, having good teeth and, getting a star on our report card isn't going to make much, it's nice, but it's not going to really fulfill what's needed. Okay. So the real thing is to control the mind, because it's our mind that creates the havoc. Yeah, the rules are not the real problem. It's our mind that says, I don't like, there's too many rules and I don't like them. And I didn't have a vote on these rules. If I'm living here, I should have a vote. Okay? Doesn't matter if other people know more than I do. I want to vote on the rules. Until you give me my American vote, I'm going to make you miserable. And that makes us happy. I'm standing up for myself. I'm not letting anybody take advantage of me. They're not bossing me around. Yeah. I will do this and I will do that, not do that. And I am the final decider of what I do and don't do. And I don't care if you have a monastic system that is 2,000 years old, 25 centuries old, if I didn't have a vote on it, and if my vote didn't win, I'm not going to play. But you should still be nice to me and feed me and be pleasant and, bend over backwards to make me feel comfortable. Yeah. So this is why they say the mind is the root of the problem. This is a story I didn't tell when we were telling stories about our full ordination last week. Because I didn't understand the language. There was no translation except for a little bit in the break time by one of my teammates who spoke some English. But, and there were like 550 people at my ordination, a lot. And when it was time for teachings, the teachings were in the dining room. But you couldn't have everybody just go and put their shoes out and walk into the dining room. And even when you went in the hall, the Buddha hall, you couldn't have everybody just show up and take their shoes off and go in an organized manner. Okay, so we had to line up outside. All of our teams lined up outside. Yeah. And you're lined up and you're, like this. You don't look around at all the lay people. You are firm and concentrated, but you try and see what the person in front and to the side of you are doing, because you don't understand what they're saying and you don't want to make an idiot out of yourself. But to go into the dining room for the teachings, we first had to file into the hall, the Buddha hall. Okay, our rooms were over here, the Buddha hall's here, the dining room's here. We had to line up outside the Buddha hall. 550 people had to go into the Buddha hall in all of our lines. You can imagine how long that takes. And then immediately after everybody was in, to file out again, because you go in a single file, each team joining. When you come out, it's also a single file, each team joining. And so you had to file in like that, 550 people. Then you had to file out of the main hall and go to the dining room and file in again. Okay? So, I am young, intelligent. Yeah. And I have American exceptionalism because we are creative people and can solve problems. At least that's what all the presidents tell us, isn't it? Anything can be possible. So I knew a better way to get 550 people in the dining room without wasting so much time going into the Buddha hall first. But you know what? Nobody wanted to listen to my idea. Nobody. Can you imagine that? My brilliant idea that would have saved so much time. But they told me that I was there to train. Oh, yeah, I guess. I want to become a bhikshuni. If that means I have to train, well, yeah, I guess I better. So it was kind of like, these are the masters, kid, and they know how to do things. And you look at your mind if you think that you are smart enough to run the whole show of 550 people for over a month. Yeah. They didn't say that to me, but that's what I learned from it. It's like, okay, I came here to train. I may have a beautiful, fantastic idea. And so what? Yeah. Right now, my purpose is to train my mind. Very humbling, but very good for me. Very good for me. Because this mind that says, I'm smart and intelligent and I can figure it out and I can do it. That kind of mind is not really serving us properly.
For me, I think it's a balance, because we can still, I think it's important to understand why the rules exist and the reason behind it, because without it, we're just blindly following. And if we can question Buddha's teaching, we should also be able to question why all these rules exist. Yeah. So we can be more convinced that this is good to follow. Yeah.
So there's different ways of questioning rules. There are rules that were made before I came by people who have more knowledge than me, and I want to understand their way of thinking on how they made the rules, because that will help me follow the rules, but it will also help me grow in my own wisdom, because all the factors that they had to take into consideration to come up with this rule are things that I've probably not thought about. So it's actually educational for me to learn about why things are done this way. Okay. That kind of questioning is very good, and we should do that. That wasn't the kind of questioning I was doing. I was this just does not make sense, and I'm smarter and I know better, and I will, fix it. It's, mine was coming from arrogance. Yeah, I didn't want to learn from them. I wanted to dictate. Okay.
Well, did you ever find out why they were going into the temple before they were going to lunch?
No, because when it came time to ask questions, I had some time to ask the masters questions. I requested that time. I realized that this was not an important question to ask. I had questions on the precepts and what constituted a transgression and how to keep the precepts in the living conditions I was going back to. And that was much more important than how you file in and out of a hall.
Couple of things. I remember we filed up too, but there was a short prayer before lunch. That's why we had to...
there was a what?
A short prayer before lunch. That's why we had to gather in front of the Buddha and then file back to the dining room. But I wanted to share a very nice example that I heard yesterday. Venerable Deki, she told me that, she has this knowledge about forest management and such, and so she came here and she has all this knowledge. And then talking with Venerable Samkhya and trying to figure out, I hope you don't mind, it's a beautiful story, trying to figure out, how that works here. And she said, I have all these ideas, but I don't say them yet. I listen first. What has she developed over all these years? What has she learned? So she wanted to explore that with the intention to learn. And I found that beautiful. It's a good example of what you mentioned here.
Yeah, right. Because if you know why things are done in a certain way, then, Semke knows that you have the education and experience, then, she may, invite, you can say things and she'll hear. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's always a wise way if you want to give feedback, is to understand why somebody's doing what they're doing first, instead of, just going in there and saying, well, I know better and what you're doing is wrong, and like that. Mm-hmm. But I took the word right out of your mouth.
And I wanted to say that efficiency is, I found, not the most important aspect of monastic training. And that's efficiency.
Efficiency, yeah.
And that's something that I think comes up repeatedly for people who come here from the working world. And efficiency is usually the number one value, but you get here and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so inefficient. But it's the training. So I'm thinking that filing in and out is like a fortitude practice. They're teaching you to work with your mind. I mean, that could be the purpose.
Yeah. Let me tell you a secret. I think things are too inefficient too. But I try and say something to the people involved, and I have to practice fortitude. So if I have to practice fortitude, they're tough cookies here. Yeah? But it's really true that we've been raised that efficiency is the most important thing, and and we aren't the most efficient thing. Our efficiency could be improved. Yeah. But you're right. It's training that is the most important. And so the training in, because we come in here, just like me coming in here with going into Taiwan with all my brilliant ideas, coming into a monastery, you have to come in with humility and an attitude that wants to learn, because very often things are done for a certain reason. Sometimes the reasons are stupid, but you have to listen to why people are doing what they're doing, and then in a respectful way, and then you can make suggestions. Yeah. But if you come in and you're not trying to find out why they're doing what they're doing, and you just want to change everything, then really our training at that point is to remember that we came here to train and we came here to learn, and that things, there may be reasons for doing things in a certain way. I remember many years ago, I don't know if you remember this, but maybe I shouldn't bring it up. But it was only the two of us here, and we had leftovers for lunch, and she was heating the leftovers up first day, second day, the same leftovers repeatedly. And I said to her, don't, only heat things up once, not more than once. There was a little bit pushback on that, because, what do you want me to do? Throw out the leftovers? No, that's not it. Just heat up the amount that we need. Yeah. She says, well, why can't we heat up more? What's the problem of heating up leftovers multiple times? And then I realized, she doesn't understand, why not to do it. And I said, because every time you heat it up, it depletes the vitamins. Okay, so that's why you only heat the leftovers up one time. And then she said, that makes sense. And then that solved the problem, because then she understood that advice. So, if we ask why things are done in a certain way in a respectful voice, people can explain it to us. And it might just make sense. Yeah. And sometimes they are very stubborn and they can't see it. Who's stubborn, them or me? Who's the stubborn one? The one saying, I do it this way, and you just shut up? Or the one who says, what you're doing is wrong, let's change it? Who's the stubborn one? They're having a competition for who's the most stubborn. Okay.
Or we've always done it this way.
Yeah. Or my teacher said we do it this way and drilled it into me, and this is the only way to do it.
That works.
Yeah. So, yes?
I think with the ordination training, it's a different context because I think a lot of it is really geared towards getting us to drop our self-centered mind.
Yeah.
And the idea is maybe even there that you're going to come up with the idea that this is inefficient and that you need to learn to deal with your mind about it.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, I don't think that the masters are being stubborn. I think they have a reason for having you come up against something that you'll learn from.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen just in the ordination program.
No, but that's a different context is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
During the
I
ordination
mean, it
program.
happens all through your life. Whether people are trying to train you or not, you are in training.
Right. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But the whole thing, about ordination is we have to be humble because that mind of, I'm right or I'm going to win or I know best is not going to serve us if we want to benefit sentient beings. Yeah, because we will become just as stubborn as the people that we say are inefficient and holding all these dumb rules. We will become exactly that way and just have the thing of, I'm doing what I'm doing and I know best. And don't you dare, challenge it. So it's very important, for developing bodhicitta. But humility does not mean you give in all the time and you keep your mouth shut. And it does not mean that you just say, well, I'm stupid and they're wiser. It means that you deal with situations in a respectful way. Yeah. And that you're willing sometimes, when other people have a reason for doing things in a certain way, even sometimes it isn't the way you would want to do it, you give in because it's much easier to just do it their way than battle. Okay, so there may be two ways of cutting the carrots that are equally efficient, very well done, but you just like the carrots cut so that they're round, and other people like the carrots cut so that they're like carrot sticks. That one is just personal preference. Somebody else wants to do it the other way. Fine. Yeah. And this is when the verse in, what is it? When it says, I will give the victory to others. Yeah. It's like, I don't have to win everything and get my preference. And it's nothing off of my back to give up my stubbornness. In fact, it's good for me to do that. If somebody is doing something harmful and they're stubborn about it, like telling you to drink Clorox to prevent from getting COVID, you just don't say, well, I respect you, because you have a superior position to me, and yes, you know best, and I will follow. No, I mean, if something is dangerous, then you have to say something. Yeah. And you may even have to go and take the Clorox and do something else with it. Yeah. So you have to weigh each situation. Is this really something that is important where there's danger involved? Either physical or mental danger, where I have to intervene, or is this something that really is not such a big deal? And it's just me wanting to be right, me wanting to have the last word.
Question says, not sure why questioning and also accepting is mutually exclusive. If you can check your mind for arrogance first, can we still question?
Yes, exactly. That's my point.
I just wanted to add, for the sake of people who like to think about reasons why things are done, my perception too is going back to the example of full ordination and the lining up. What Venerable Kunga said about Americans value efficiency, right? Asians value order. And to them, it's a magnificent, dignified display, right?
Yeah.
All the lay people are out there watching to see the monastics standing at attention, doing their best, and to file in. I mean, when you describe your alternative, like the bell rings and everyone runs out in flip-flops and goes to the kitchen, man, that would not fly.
Exactly.
I was just like, would not work.
Yeah.
It's inconceivable to the master or the Asian mindset. It's like, huh?
Yeah. And that is actually quite a good reason, because as monastics, we should be aware that how we move in space affects other people's concept of monastics. And if we're just like, then it affects people's respect, and faith in the Sangha. That's quite a good reason, actually. Yeah, where were you all those years ago? Where were you in 1986?
Well, karma ripened 2 years ago.
Okay.
It's just funny hearing you relate that, because it's like a total non-issue to me. I had never even asked the question. It's like, yeah, of course we're gonna get in line and walk. But maybe I've done that my whole life. Like showed up, gotten in line, and stood at attention, and made sure the line was straight.
Yeah. But in the Tibetan scene, everybody just runs in, and your shoes are you don't even line your shoes up. I mean, I think we definitely have to line our shoes up, but they don't even, the shoes are all over the place. This step, you're in a hurry, you move somebody else's shoes, not by picking them up, you just kick them. And one goes this way and one that goes that way. And that's just the way you do things. And it's fine. Yeah.
And to add to that also, the group ideology. Like I was also very familiar with lining up. I had no problem because I learned when I was very young, orienting yourself towards the group, not you as an individual. You just melt into the big group. Yeah, and that reduces the ego if you practice it well.
Yeah, it is. It subdues our egoism. Yeah. But this is, I think, this kind of individuality that is so ingrained in American culture, I think is quite damaging, actually. Because it makes people, it makes it difficult for people to cooperate. Because everybody says, I want to vote and I have an opinion. And even if my vote didn't win, that's because it was a crooked election. Yeah. This thing of I'm going to win no matter what. And it's not good for the country. But, and we can all agree that other people should definitely be more humble. But I am right. And what I'm saying is for the benefit of the whole group. Yeah. This is our arrogance, isn't it? Yeah.
Even with COVID, the masks and vaccines, the individual thing isn't helpful.
Yeah. It isn't helpful. Yeah. I mean, it's really, we could have stopped so many, that's what's coming out now. So many lives could have been saved if we had just followed the people who knew more than us, without our individualism, rising up and saying, well, I don't think it's a good idea, and I didn't have a vote in it, and, it makes me uncomfortable. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. So as a result, the pandemic is, some people are saying it might be going into the fourth surge now. And at the same time it's going into the fourth surge, states are opening up and leaving the rules aside. And what's interesting is 43% of the surges are in 5 states. Yeah. Well, yeah, Florida, Michigan, I think. Wisconsin? I don't know. Maybe Texas? Yeah. Yeah, maybe California too. Or actually, they were saying in the central states, in the north central states, there were more cases too. But it kind of correlates with the restrictions.
I have to say, this has brought up a huge question about what the heck is liberty. What is freedom about anyway? What is liberty? What are individual rights?
Yeah.
I mean, this whole this construct is just coming back to just blow us out of the water as a country, because we've confused what that really means.
Yeah. We think liberty means I can do what I want, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not. My liberty can impinge on your liberty. Yeah, and that's okay because it's my liberty. But your needs cannot impede on my liberty. Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to do a lot of damage, that attitude.
And that's the dominant culture.
Oh, yeah. And it's the dominant culture, I think, because when we were little kids, this stuff, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and they all rebelled against England for putting these taxes on us, and we are just not going to be bossed around by anybody. We want our life, our liberty, and I want my life, my liberty, my pursuit of happiness. If your life is endangered by my liberty, too bad. Okay? So that's I don't think what the founding fathers meant. But, this is the myth that of the revolution. And, who was it? Patrick, somebody said, give me liberty or give me death. Patrick Henry, yes. Okay. So, give me liberty or give me death. So liberty is the most important thing, and the people who, the insurrected or whatever they did at the Capitol, whatever word you want to see, invaded the Capitol, that's what they were saying. Give me liberty or give me death. I'm taking back my country. Yeah. So I think, a lot of it starts with the way history is taught, and we stood up to authority and rebelled.
And who the we is?
White American men, Christian, white, Christian, prosperous men, not poor men, not women, not minorities, not people who aren't Christian, but it's taught to us as if, it's the rule for everybody. And it's so strange because, I remember growing up and thinking, wow, these are wonderful principles. I really believe in them. Everybody has these rights. And then wondering if everybody has these rights because of what it says in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, how come we have to have so many court cases to get our rights? How come people don't just automatically realize, of course, this other person has rights? And, why did some people have no rights to start with? And then when it finally dawns on the majority, why did these people even have to go to the court? It's like, wait a minute, it already says so in our founding documents, and we learned it and believed it when we were little. But how come?
It's not implemented.
What?
It's not implemented across the board.
Yeah, it's not implemented. And many people, still have that attitude, So, yeah, that's so strange. Yeah. It's like so obvious. We already decided that. Except that was the small print that none of us knew, except the people who wrote it, because we couldn't see the small print. And the small print was, as you said, white, prosperous, Christian men. Yeah. So we read one contract, and the contract was written in another way. Small print.
Yesterday, we finished watching the documentary on women's suffrage movement.
Uh-huh.
And if I remember correctly, at the very end of the second part of the series, they said that any right that somebody has in a democracy was fought for. So I think they're making the point that democracy doesn't drop out of the sky, and there's always these opposing forces there. And they were saying the women weren't given the vote. They had to fight tooth and nail to get that ability.
Right. And I'm saying, why did they need to fight? Because
it
was initially written.
But you could say the founding fathers, they had to fight England to get their right to vote. So, democracy is like a product of all of these different causes and conditions. And it's a struggle. There's a struggle inherent in democracy that we don't always recognize, I think. We're just a bit Pollyannish about it.
Yeah. Well, that's because democracy isn't everything that the definition says it is. And the definition needs improvement, and people's behavior needs improvement as well. Our history expert.
It's a quote from James Joyce.
Okay.
History is a nightmare I want to awaken from.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That leaves us. We will start next time. 19. Yeah, verse 19 is very important too. Well, actually, the whole book is very important.